How's it going, guys? Moses Designer here with a new Unreal Engine tutorial. This tutorial will cover the basics of creating your own landscape material. So to get started, we'll have to download a quick package. Hopefully it does not get nuked like the Elemental demo did, but this is a much shorter tutorial, so hopefully that won't be the issue. But you can use any terrain package you like with the same steps. But for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm using a package from the marketplace, and you want to go to where it says free, permanently free, scroll down, go to the second page. You want Grass Landscape Material Volume 1. Get it. It's free. It will show up in your library somewhere. I have a lot of things in my library, so it'll be somewhere on the screen. And you want to add to project. If you do not have a project, launch your editor, and you'll be greeted with this screen here. And you want to click on Games. Next. Blank is fine. And at the bottom, just give it a name. We'll call this Landscape Learning. And do Create Project. And when it's loaded, you should have this screen, but your content browser is empty. Do not close your editor. Instead, just relaunch the Epic Games Launcher. Go to your library. Go to where you downloaded the package in your library, Grass Landscape Material Volume 1. Add to project. Which project? Landscape Learning. Give it a minute to load in. I've already downloaded it, so it's much faster. It might be a little slower on your computer, but just give it some time. And when it's done, come back to your editor and look. In your content browser, you now have Grass Landscape. We don't need our modes for now. And usually this is easier with 2 monitors, but I'll try to do it with 1. Anyways, you want to come to your content browser, open up Grass Landscape, open up Textures 4K, and these are the textures we will be using to create a landscape material. To create a material, you need texture samples. And in the texture samples, it's already broken down to 4 pieces. You have the texture's albedo is what we'll see. You have its AO, ambient occlusion, its height map, and its normal map. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to keep things simple, and we're only going to be using albedos and normal maps. Alright, so let's go back to our content browser. Go to the top level where it says content. We can right click, create a new folder. We'll call this materials. Open our folder, right click, add a new material. We'll call this landscape, mat for material. Double click it, and this is our material editor. Right now there's nothing here. We will add things to this main node for the material to be present in our editor. To do that, we just need to understand some basics. I am also learning the material editor as I go along, so if I make a mistake, let me know in the comments below. The basics are, you need a base color. If you hover over it, it defines the overall color of the material. You have the metallic, how metal-like your surface should be. Specular, used to scale the current amount of specularity for non-metallic surfaces. You have roughness, controls how rough the material is. The roughness of 0 is smooth, and it is a mirror reflection, and a roughness of 1 is completely matte or diffuse. So those are the things we need to mess around with as we create this material. There's other things we can do as well, just trying to keep things basic and simple for you guys. So how do we actually create the landscape material? Well, let's go back to our content. Go to the Grass Landscape folder. Click on Textures, 4K, and as I mentioned earlier, we're only going to be using albedo and normals. You can mess with height maps and ambient occlusion, but for today, just keep it bare bones and simple. So let's just click on ground 1 albedo, drag it into our world, or not world, but the material editor, and grab the ground 1 normal. Right, now I'm going to maximize my material editor. Quickly, what we could just do is plug in the texture sample RGB to the base color and the normal to the normal map. Hey, and we have grass. Oh, where did it go? Yay, we have grass. But we don't want that. We actually need to be able to paint this material. That will just apply the material. So we will disconnect these nodes. And what we need is if you right click and type landscape, you have landscape layer blend. You'll add it to your material editor. With it selected, do Control W, and we need a second one. When you click on it, in the bottom corner where it says Material Expression Landscape Layer Blend. 0 array elements. We need to add a new element. And here, when you expand the 0, we need to give it a name. We'll call this base grass. Likewise, on the other one, you can, well, if you want to save time, you can just delete this, select this, and duplicate this one, so it already has our layer blend in it. And now what we need to do is connect the RGB value to the layer blend, and connect the layer blend to the base color. Same with the normal map, connect it to the layer blend, and then connect this to normal maps. But we're not done yet. We still need to tell this material how to paint on a landscape, actor. And to do that, we can right click and do landscape, and you have landscape layer chords. This will tell the material how to paint on the landscape surface. So it has some values. When you click on it, it has mapping scale, mapping rotation, mapping pan U, mapping pan V. But for now, we're just going to plug it directly into our UVs of the albedo and the normal map. Hit apply and hit save. And we'll minimize this. We will minimize our content browser. Come to the editor and go to Window, Editor Modes, Modes panel. And in search classes, type landscape. Drag the gizmo in. And here it's asking for a material. It says none. So let's load our content browser. Go to the top level. We have our materials folder, landscape matte. Select it and just click on the little arrow. And the size, let's keep it simple, 15 by 15. And create. Two things will happen. One, it will compile shaders, it will look black, and you'll have some Z fighting here. And if you have a big white circle, that is because you are in terrain editor mode. So let's go back to Modes panel. Let's click on the Place tool, the Place tab. So to get rid of the Z fighting, just select the box, see it's highlighted, delete. While we save, we'll call this landscape learning. So two things you notice. One, the material is black, and two, it is very reflective. Also, the editor's auto exposure is on at this time, so it depends how you look at it, you will see the reflectiveness of the material. But for now, let's go to unlit mode. And you might be thinking, okay, well, why it does not look like grass? Well, we'll go back to our editor modes panel, landscape, click on the paint button, and you have your layer that we created in the layer blend called base grass. It looks like grass, but if you look closely, it says none. It doesn't have what's called a layer info. simply just click the Create Layer Info button on the far right. And there's a difference between weight blend and non-weight blends, but for today, we're just going to click on non-weight blended layer. Just hit OK. So if you had a red circle, just click on the layer, it'll turn to a white circle. But we do not need it at this time. So it's going to go back to the place tool, the place button, modes. And we are still in unlit mode, but let me turn on lighting. And as I pan around, you see that reflectiveness on the surface. And if I look closely, you see these repeating lines. It's easier to see in unlit mode. But it looks very repetitive, like one cube by one cube by one cube of the same material. So how do we fix that? How do we fix both things? The reflectiveness and the repetitive texture. Yes, at the ground level, if you're the player, you may not notice it, but from a top view, you do see it, and then maybe as a player, you'll see that it is quite repetitive. So let's zoom out a little bit. Let's go back to our content, top level, materials, landscape material, and let's mess with the landscape coordinates first. So as I mentioned, it has different attributes, so you can change the mapping scale, the rotation. You can change the scale in the U and the V direction. The mapping scale itself will be uniform, so let's change the scale to, let's say, a value of 2.5, and then we can change our rotation to a value of, let's say, 33. And as you can see, the landscape material coordinate colorization has changed, so I'm still learning more about what those colors mean, but if you set it back to 0 on mapping scale and on rotation, it seems like a perfect square. Like we saw those little squares, and it's like a little like the bisecting line of like a 50-50 split of how the material is mapped to the surface. So we can adjust that perfect split by changing our scale, like I put mine at 2.5 and our rotation at 33. Hit apply, hit save, and then to move around in the material editor, just right click and drag around like you do in Blueprint. And we want to come over here to where it says roughness. And remember, when you hover over it, it tells you, controls how rough the material is. 0 is smooth like a mirror, and 1 is matte diffuse. So we would need this value to be at 1. To do that, just hold 1 on your keyboard, click. You will get what is called a material expression constant. And the value is 0. We need the value to be 1. Enter. And connect that to your roughness value. Apply. And save. Throughout this process, you will have shaders compiling. Don't worry about that. That's completely normal. Minimize. And now, as you can see, our terrain is still repetitive in nature, but now it's skewed by 33 degrees and scaled up. Each segment is scaled up by 2.5. So at the ground level, it doesn't look as repetitive as before. Yes, from a bird's eye view, it's still very repetitive, but you won't be seeing this view. As a player, you will probably be at this level, which looks pretty decent. But the next thing we need to do is add in a second material to paint on top of this material. So to do that, we'll go back to our landscape material. Kind of half minimize this so we can see this and our content browser. Go back to the top level. Go back to grass landscape. Go to textures, 4K, and pick any texture you like. For sake of simplicity, I'll just pick ground 2 albedo and the ground 2 normal map. And I put the albedos together and the normal maps together, and we'll do a little bit of organization here as well. So I'm going to select my layer blend and just do break links. And I'm going to disconnect my landscape coordinate for now. And if you do not know which material is which, let's say you're moving around, or which texture, sorry, just click on it and it will tell you the name of the texture. So this is ground 1, and if I click here, this is ground 1 normal, so I know which one's which. Doing a very quick organization pass, just selecting our albedos, right click, comment, and this is our albedo textures, and right click, select both nodes, and right click, comment, normal maps. And now let's go to our layer blend, click on the first one, and we need to add a new layer. So click on add element, click on the little 1, the second array, give it a name, we'll call this path. And you can just delete this one, select this, Control W to duplicate, and we can select this, right click, comment, and we'll call this base color blend. Select this layer blend, comment, we'll call this normal maps layer blend. So now let's say we sort of add in a third, fourth, or fifth, as many materials as textures we need. We keep things organized so our wires don't just start going all over the place. We know where we are connecting them to and where they're coming from. So I'm going to select my ground 1 connected back to base grass, and select the ground 2, connect it to layer path. Same with ground 1 normal, and ground 2 goes to layer path, the normal map. And the layer blend just goes right back to base color, and the normal maps go right back to normal maps. And we can have all these share the same landscape coordinates, but for organization's sake, we will add another one. Select it, duplicate, and we can give this one a comment. Actually, I want to change my organization just a little bit. It's a little easier to follow along. So this will be base grass boards, and we will connect that back to our ground 1 albedo and our ground 1 normal map. And let's say for our ground 2, we want a mapping scale of 3 with a rotation of 55 degrees. We can select it, right click, comment, path boards. And this will go to the ground 2 albedo and the ground 2 normal map. So it's very easy to follow along what is talking to which thing. Apply, save, we'll minimize this, minimize the content browser, go back to our modes, landscape, and you should see the layer name here. If you do not, that means we didn't save something properly. So let's go back to our landscape editor, or our material editor. Sometimes you just have to jiggle something and it will just connect everything right back to normal. It's weird, I don't know why it does that sometimes. Just maybe break a connection, add it back, hit apply, hit save, and see, now it shows up. Why it does that, I don't know. But same thing, it has no layer info. Just click on add layer info. We're doing non-weight blend, hit OK. Right click, save, and then if you have that little star there on that one, right click save. Save everything, you don't want it to crash. We'll minimize the content browser. I have a very large brush size, so I can adjust that here. And if you want more information of how to actually use a landscape tool, I have a separate tutorial I did a while back, which I will link in the description below and on the end screen. So anyways, I can click on path, click on my landscape. It will do that checkerboard thing. It will break your shaders. I'll give it a second. And as you can see, I am now painting my path. Yes, it's probably unrealistic in scale, but this is supposed to be a basic tutorial of how to set your landscape up. And now you can add a third material, a fourth, whatever, to get more finesse of how to paint in your terrain. Maybe we don't like that scale. We can always go back to our landscape material. Let's say the base layer is 4 and the path layer is 5. This you'll have to play with based on what you're trying to create, the looks that you're trying to do. There's no right answer to what the numbers need to be. It's based on your needs, but this is how you set it up. And now, as you can see, the mapping scale has changed. If we want to add in a third material, we can quickly do that. Not a problem. Very same process. Open up the material editor. Come to our content. Go to our grass landscape folder, textures, 4K, and let's pick something else. But we're keeping things organized. So for now, I'm going to drop the albedo 6 and normal map 6. Drop this one here. Expand our comment, drag this here. Let's click on our layer blend, add a new array. We'll call this dirt. And we can just delete this layer blend if you wanted to. Duplicate this one, put it back. It does add an extra step of rewiring things up quick, but it takes only a few seconds. And just connect the RGB of the albedo to layer dirt. The normal map, first normal map to base grass, our second normal map to layer path, and our third normal map to layer dirt. Make sure this goes back to the normal node here, and need to give it landscape coordinates. We can use an existing one, or we can add a new one. Let's say, for the sake of time saving, we will click on this one and call this path and dirt chords, meaning this one will share on 2 textures. And we have that just for organization's sake, that we know we're using it for this texture sample and this texture sample. Come back to our modes. Oh, I have it on my second monitor, that's why I couldn't find it. And again, it's not showing up here. Why that happens, I do not know. Just try to reconnect something. Apply. Save. Let the shaders compile. And there it is. Same thing, it doesn't have a layer info. Add a non-weight blend layer. Hit OK. Save it. Save everything. And now we can paint our third material. See, that's an even smaller brush. And we'll cut right through here. Let the shaders rebuild. And keep in mind, I am in unlit mode. I can turn lighting back on. And it's super bright because I've not done a lighting pass, and the auto exposure is making things look a little janky. So I'm just going to work in unlit mode for now, and lighting is not a concern for this tutorial. But yes, you can now paint your third material. Inside of this one, you can add it over here. Again, this is just the basics of creating your first landscape material. And quickly, if you do want to get rid of these checkerboard lines, just rebuild lighting, it'll go away. But the main goal is that you can set up your own landscape material, play with the scale and UV mapping of how the materials stretch, and then you can do landscape sculpting, adding static meshes and decals and stuff just to get rid of the repetitive nature of things. That's a whole another topic, but for today, the discussion was to create your first basic landscape material, and we have done that. Hopefully this was easy to follow along. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer them, and I'll see you guys in the next Unreal Engine tutorial. Cheers!